So we have to start with grants now, right? Okay. So so we'll go to next part of this accrual building block. It's called grant. So we saw limits, right? So in limits, what we'll be doing, we are going to tell the system how you can limit how much money gets deposited in an employee's account or how much he can take. So we'll see what grant is now. So grant is also another important section. So we have two types of grants basically, a fixed grant and an earned grant. So a grant is what is going to allow uh, the employee to gather some amount based on the company policy as defined by the accrual. So I said two types of grants, right? So I'll tell you the example for earned grant. The first is earned, the second is fixed grant. So in earned grant, you can say that if the employee is going to work for 20 days, he's going to get 1 day of vacation time. So this is your earned grant. So you're earning something based on some of your working things. So in a fixed grant, what is going to happen is, in this case, the company is going to give the employee a flat amount, like irrespective of what happens, they're going to pay him 1.5 days of vacation every month. So we have policies, right? So every month we are getting sick leave and earned leave. So that is a fixed grant. So your earned grant and your fixed grant. Okay, so I'll tell you the definition of fixed grant. A fixed grant is an allocation of a specified amount at the date of hire or for a particular period of time that's already passed. Like if you have worked for 1 month, so for the previous month you're going to get uh, 1 day of vacation. So this is how your fixed grant is going to look like. So this is the page. So examples for fixed grants are like 1 day of vacation every month, or like one personal leave every year, like you can take it for your anniversary or for your birthday. And uh, and say you can take 2 days for your family after your after working for 12 months. So a fixed grant is nothing but an allocation of specified amount at either the date of hire or for a particular elapsed period of time. So these are the examples for fixed grant. So what is an earned grant? An earned grant is an allocation in which the award amount is based on the number of hours you have worked or the number of the certain type of hours you have worked. So for example, you can say zero point 0.5 vacation hours for every hour you work uh, in a 1 month period, or like in a 2 week period, or 1 hour of compensation for working 4 hours in a weekend time. So something like that is called an earned grant. So earned grant is nothing but an allocation in which the award amount is based on the number of hours worked and the number of certain types of hours worked. So it is important to remember that in earned grant, this type of grant is based on the number of hours an employee works in a specific pay code during a pay period, like this. So based on how much amount gets accrued in your pay code, system based on that. So in order to understand this, we have to understand something called as length of service milestone. So what is a length of service milestone? So suppose, say that you're starting to work in 2019. You started working in 2019. So I'll show this with Excel. So you're starting to work in, say, one, or like say 2/6/2021. So let's say that our accrual reset is happening every year on the 1st of January. So there's 2022, and there's 1/1/2023, and there's 1/1/2024, and so your fourth year would be in 2/6/2024, and 1 2025. Okay, so I'm going to say that I'm going to accrue some type of say some personal hours or something like that. So every year it's going to get reset. So every year I'm going to get 20. So what is my length of milestone? That is, if I'm going to say my length of milestone is 3, then it means that 3 years from the start date, I'll be getting 5 additional days on that day. Understood? So again, it goes to 20 and so on for the next year. So this is called the length of milestone. So you can say some employees can receive increased vacation awards or something like that after 1, 3, or 8 years, etc. So accrual policies might stipulate automatic increases in accrual grants based on employees' tenure with the organization, like how long he's going to work, how long has he worked. So a length of service milestone is a particular date that corresponds to an employee's tenure with the organization. So some examples are like say 5 years of service, 10 years of service, 15 years of service. So according to accrual policy rules, an accrual grant might change based on when the employee is reaching a length of service milestone. So these changes can be specific to each group within your company. So it doesn't have to be the same. So it can be different for different people. So an example of length of service milestone might, yeah. So an example of length of service milestone might be exempt employees receiving increased vacation awards after there's 3 years or 5 years or 8 years of service. So there's also something else you have to understand. There's something called as expiration in grants. So what is this expiration? So grant accruals expire in one or the two ways. Like your grant itself expires, or the amount in the balance expires at a carryover limit. So you should not confuse this grant expiration with your carryover limit. Your carryover limit affects only the accrual balances. Your grant expiration affects only the accrual grants. Okay, please make a note of this. It's also a very important interview question. So your company might grant an accrual amount that needs to be used in a specific time frame. So there are two ways we can expire accruals. One is we can use a grant here, which we discussed. The other one is to use the carryover limits, like we saw yesterday. Like you can restrict how much amount can be carried over from one time frame to another, like within months or within years. So so for example, consider when there are some contractors working for monthly compensation time. So every pay period they work based on the number of excess hours. If they work more than 40 hours, they'll be subject to some hours, right? So these hours are available for them to take immediately. So but if you have a condition where your earned compensation time expires after 9 months, so you can set something like this using your grant. So um, so that's your expiration. So you can also use these accrual grants to create some advances for your, sorry, create some options for your full time and your part time employees. Say, so consider your full time work employees working for 40 hours in a week and your part time employees working for 20 hours in a week. So you can say that your so in a month, or like in a month, your full time can earn 10 hours per month, but your part time can only earn 5. So you can set something like this. So your company will be telling you what different type of grants you need to have for the employees who are going to work full time and those who are going to work part time. So part time employees might receive a prorated amount based on the standard work hours for the full time employee. Prorating is nothing but it is the process of adjusting accrual grants for part-time employees according to the ratio of number of hours the part-time employees work to the number of hours your full-time employees work during a specified time frame. I'll probably write this out. Okay, so this is the definition for prorating. So one example for this is your company might have a policy uh, where vacation time is, I'm sorry, 1 minute. 12:30 to 1:30. Okay. Okay, so you can have an example. So in a company, uh, you will be paying vacation time in 10-hour increments on a monthly basis for your full-time employees. So your part-time employees are awarded a percentage of the full-time vacation grant based on the scheduled work, right? So if you have an employee that's scheduled to work 20 hours every week, that person's ratio for accrual grants is 20 by 40 or 50%. So the employee is going to receive 5 vacation hours monthly for working 20 hours per week. I'll write this down if you want. So based on this definition, I'll create an example. So my company is having grants vacation time in 10-hour increments on a monthly basis for the full time employee. So consider Nitya is a part time employee, and Nitya is a PT employee. Nitya is a PT employee. PT means part time. Part time employees are awarded a percentage of the full time vacation grant based upon their scheduled work hours. So Nitya is scheduled to work 20 hours every week. Full time is working for 40. Nitya is going to work for 20 because she's part time. So her ratio for accrual grants is 20 by 40 or 50%. So based on the calculation, Nitya is going to get 5 hours of vacation monthly for working 20 hours a week. So this is prorating. So you're basically going to prorate this by dividing the ratio of number of hours the part time is going to work to the ratio of number of hours the full time is going to work during a specified time frame. So this is for a week. So your full time can work for 40 and your part time can still only work for 10. So in that case, how much she'll be getting? 25. That's only 25%. So she'll be getting less than probably 2.5 hours of vacation she'll be getting every month. So this is called prorating. This is another concept in grants. So this is used when you have full time and part time. So if part time employees work more hours than expected, your company policy might change. Like they'll say that increase the ratio for extra hours worked and continue to earn the percentage for the grant only. So grant for part time is based on something called as full time equivalent. We'll see that in some time. So if you want to qualify for a grant, you can have a qualifier added to it. So you can have a probation period. I think it's in earned. Okay, so you can either have a probation period, which is going to allow your employees to accrue time or money during a set time frame, but it is not going to allow your employees to take the time or money until they finish the probation period. Or you can have a grant qualifier, which is going to restrict an employee from receiving granted time or money until certain qualifying conditions are met, like the days active or hours in a pay code, something like that. So say for example, a company could require that their employees work a set number of hours in a pay period before being granted vacation time. So your grant qualifies further defined when and how the grants are awarded to the employees. Your grant qualifies are not the building blocks, but these are small options within the grant building block that's going to test for specific conditions, like minimum number of days worked or the maximum number of days worked before a pay period, something like that. So we have four types of qualifiers. So consider an example where we can have a qualifier. So grants, you can have one or more qualifiers, by the way. You can just add one or more qualifiers, by the way. So I'll give you an example. So I'll write it down. So I'll write it down. So company is going to award some type, says like union employees a monthly vacation grant which is earned on a per hour basis. So every, or not every, okay, every hour you work, uh, every hour you work equals 0.084 of vacation grant. But I have a condition. I'm going to have a condition. I'm going to have a condition which is like the employee must work 40 hours per week during 3 out of 4 4 weeks in last month in order to qualify for the grant. So in addition to this, my condition number 2 is, in addition, mm, in addition to above, they can earn a maximum of 13.44 hours per month, no matter how many hours they actually work, no matter how many hours they actually work in that period. Maximum amount is 160 hours. So why I arrived at 13.44 is 160 hours into 0.084 hours is equal to 13.44 hours. So to establish this, we will have to use the hours in the pay code qualifier. One second. Okay, so consider my scenario like this. So my organization is going to award some type of employees a monthly vacation grant, which they can earn based on the per hour basis. So they're going to so every hour they work is going to equal this much amount of vacation grant. But I have a condition that the employee must work 40 hours per week during 3 weeks out of the 4 weeks in the last month in order to qualify for the grant. So my first qualifier is going to be days worked. So I have to check weeks. So I have to check 4 weeks. So in 4 weeks, they must have at least a minimum of 3. So the amount is going to be 3. So if I'm going, so for the second condition, what I'll have to do is, in addition to the above, they can earn a maximum of 13.44 hours per month, no matter how many hours they actually work in that period. So for this, I have to use hours in the pay code qualifier to further define the monthly. So I have to tell them it has to be greater than or less than equal to. So my condition is it's 160. What pay code I want to, I'll probably use comp has. What periods to check, I'll check it 4 weeks once. So this is my condition. So this is how I'm going to qualify it. So if I have a condition, I have to make sure I use a qualifier for that. So this example is there in your activity. So when you do it, you'll be able to relate to it. So this qualifier is the same for both fixed and earned grant. So we'll just go and see the setup, how it looks like. So I already said we have two types of grants, fixed and earned. So fixed grants define periodic accrual increases in fixed amounts. The amounts are fixed according to the date pattern and length of service milestone. Date pattern and length of service milestone. So so your fixed grants can occur once or they can occur repeatedly. So changing the grant type from fixed to earn will change the options like you just saw. So once you choose fixed and once you create it and once you save it, you'll not be able to make any changes to it. So you have to make sure you make the correct options and then you have to save it. So the next one is the date pattern. So we've already seen what date pattern is. So the date pattern, we will select whatever date pattern we need that to be defined. So this date pattern is going to specify the period of time the grant is going to be awarded within that period. Okay, so we'll see fixed grants first. So we have something called as award grant, right? So this award grant field is going to allow us to tell the system if this fixed grant should be awarded only one time, if it's only a one time thing, or if it is something that you can do repeatedly, if it is one time or repeatedly. So selecting, if you select one time only in the grant editor, uh, in this grants, sorry, so when you select one time only in this grant editor, this it will grant the designated amount once, like at the beginning of the selected pattern. So if you do repeatedly, it's going to do it like, so if you say 30 days, it's going to do it every 30 days once. So probably if you want to say like, I want to grant vacation hours, like I want to grant 1 day of vacation every month, then you can use repeatedly option to achieve the same. So the next thing is expiration. So this is the grant expiration area. So this is going to tell the system if it has to allow the grant to expire after a certain amount of time, or if they can be set not to expire. So if you want to expire the grant, you will have to enter the number and you have to whatever unit of time that applies to it, like days, months, years, calendar periods, or pay periods. So we'll see full-time equivalence a little later. Now that's a topic, so I'll just cover it at the end. So the last thing is, we saw what pro rating is, so how it's been done, and we saw qualifiers. So just give me a minute. Okay, so we'll see how an earned grant is going to look. Okay, we'll see what earned grant is going to look like. Earned grant. So in this, when you're choosing an earned grant, this screen is different, right? So this setup looks very small. So in this type of grant, we will be choosing what pay codes are going to have the amount of time or money that's accrued in whatever pay code we want to do. Like, do we want to do compensation hours, or do we want to check the vacation? Okay, so you can base grant on amount accumulated in the pay code. So when you're defining an earned grant, you have to select a pay code that counts towards the earnings. So you can either select either a pay code or a combination pay code from this drop down list. So this drop down list is going to select all your pay codes from the pay policies that you created, not from your accrual codes. So, so the next setup is your award grants. So once you select a pay code, you're going to tell if it has to calculate immediately or if it has to calculate based on the date pattern. So the next field is your award grant. So you can set up your system to award earned grants to employees each time there is an appropriate pay code that's being used, or like if you want to accumulate the grants and award them to the employees at regular intervals. To award grants to employees every time the pay code is used, you have to use the immediately option. Okay, yeah. So to accumulate and award grants at regular intervals, you will be using the date pattern option in this section. So uh, so if in case when you're working here and if you think you need a date pattern option that doesn't exist, you have to first create the date pattern and then again you have to come back here and you have to create it. So otherwise, you'll not be able to. There's no option to create one per se in this option. Okay, so in your award grant, you have two options, right? So you're going to use whatever grant amount you have accumulated, or should you make it in so should you make it in increments? So like so if you have some point, say you have some odd decimal number, say like 0.87 or 0.8788, something like that. So do you want to truncate the number? So in that case you'll use this, but this is generally not used. So in my example I've only given you to use an earn grant amount. So there's another option called carryover partials and reset to. So in this case, it's going to, if you have any carryovers or if you have any reminders in it, you can use to carry forward it. But that's that's not very efficient to work with the carryover in a grant. So instead, you can use a carryover limit to achieve that. So there's an expiration tab. So this expiration has the same options that we saw in the fixed grant. You can either choose to expire or not choose to expire it. And then the last one is your qualifier. So based on the conditions that you want to set. So so you can use the grant building blocks if the following are same for you, like if your date pattern, expiration date, your part-time prorating, and your qualifier. If these four things are same, then you can use the same grant in different building blocks. Okay. So, but if you have any differences in it, you have to create a new grant and make sure you rename it. Okay. Um. Okay. So this is about grants. Just give me a minute. I'm picking up my notes for full-time employee. Okay, I have a question. Uh, so I have to give 3 days of sick time um, every month. So what type of grant should you use? Fixed or earned?
And
No, I'll tell the question again. So 3 days of sick time for every month. Every month I have to give 3 days of sick.
the fixed, it is fixed it.
Fixed. Okay, my second question. So I'm going to give 0.75. I'm going to give half a day vacation for every 5 hours work. So what type of grant should you use?
And
And okay, super. So I have to give a grant of one personal day every month after an employee is completing his probation period. What type of grant should I use? Fixed or earned? This is a trick question.
Uh, can you repeat the question?
Okay, so I have to give one personal day when the employee is completing his probation period.
Let's speak.
Yes, very good. And I have to give one personal day uh, for every 100 days worked.
It's earned.
Earned. Okay, very good. So now you know the difference, right? So if you're working and you're getting something, it's your earned grant. If there is no condition, only you have condition like probation or qualifier, then it's fixed grant. Okay, clear about this?
Yes.
Okay, very good. So I'll be omitting this accrual round rules. I have not worked with it, but probably I can check later, and at the end of the class, we can do one miscellaneous session on whatever we missed. So let's see what an accrual policy is. So this accrual policy is nothing but you're just going to add whatever building blocks you have created so far, and you'll be making an accrual policy out of it. So this accrual policy is going to define how and when the balances associated with the codes are either credited or debited. This accrual policy controls how your employees accrue time, money, or both. Okay, so I'll just explain you the building blocks for this. So when you set it, you'll be able to. I mean, when you do an example, you'll be able to. So I'll have to give an appropriate policy name for this. So your accrual policy must contain all the required information that's associated to the accrual for a particular employee group. So this policy editor is where we pull our existing building blocks like your grants, limits, etc., and then you put them all together and you finish the policy setup for each type of policy your customer can have. So you can create multiple policies like policy A, B, C, D, and you can create a profile with it, like create a profile A, create a profile X or something like that. So so the first section is this whole section is called your overall policy information. So in this section, we will choose what accrual code we will be using for this policy. So you have to be careful when you choose your accrual code. So if you choose a day based code, and if you save the policy, if you save all units of the policy, then it will all be using days. So if you decide you need to change the code to hours later, you'll have to create a new one. So first itself we have to decide if this is going to be a day based policy or like hours based policy. So the probation period that we have already defined, that we can select here. So and then we'll be selecting which accrual code. This you can omit it for now. And length of service is your date pattern. I'll cover the accrual overflow later. So this is your first overall information thing. So the next page is your uh, grants page. So in this grants, you're going to define amounts for each milestones in rows. The accrual code to which grants expire is defined in the rows in the accrual policy editor. So whether and when an accrual code will expire is actually defined when a grant is created in the grant editor. So here you'll just come and you'll be creating whatever grants you want to do, like say grants expire to this or something like that. So you can add multiple rows for the grants. So the next is your limits. So you'll be adding earning and carryover limits to the policies in the limits section here. So your limits are going to define minimum and maximum amounts that control how your accrual balances grow. So for each earning and carryover limit, you have to create one row for each length of service. So this length of service also works the same way for limits like they do for your grants, this length of service. So if you have multiple limits, you have to use a separate set of rows for your limits. So we saw this taking section yesterday, right? So this taking section in this accrual policy editor is going to hold many fields that we already saw in the limits module. So you can define the pay code that will cause deduction to the accrual policy here. So the minimum taking an increment amount is also defined in this section. So the restore taking option is used for family medical leave or something, etc., like that. So okay, so that's it. And the last part is your overdraft part. So this is another important part. So what this overdraft means is, so this is going to let you know if you can allow the employee to have minus on his account, or if he shouldn't have any minus in his account. So consider you have a vacation pay code. So consider there are 10 hours in it already. There are 10 hours for him. So this employee has already used the 10 hours. So his balance is now 0. So if he's going to add one more 1 or 2 hours to it, so do you think the system should allow it or not? Just a minute. Sorry. Okay, so that is your overdraft. So we have past or present overdrafts, and before that we have a warning overdraft and disallow overdraft, right? So if you want to disallow overdraft, you have to put 0.00 in it. So what this does is, the employee will not be able to do a minus on his time card, or even a manager will not be able to add a minus. So this will allow the balance from going negative. So what happens is, sometimes when your balance goes into negative, it deducts from next year's balance. So suppose you have a balance of -8, and every January you're going to get 20 hours, means this -8 will get reduced from 2022 January's 20 hours. So he'll only be able to start with 12 hours next year. So some companies might want to avoid that. So in those cases, they disallow this overdraft amount. If you want to allow overdraft amount, you can give a warning amount. So for example, if I give 8, it means that if my balance is coming to 8, it's going to show a message on the screen saying that, hey, it's a warning for you, you only have this much balance. But it'll still allow that employee to add a minus amount on his time card. So that is the meaning of warning overdraft and disallow overdraft. So you have two conditions over here: past or present and future. So what future means is, some employees, they request vacation for the future, right? So you're on September 17, you can request vacation for December, but you don't know what is going to happen in between. So you might have already had another vacation added for next month. You might have not remembered it, or the manager might not remember it. So he might directly go and add something in for the future in December. So the system is going to check at what date he is going to check. Say for example, 15th of December for this year, he is going to request another 8 hours. So on that day, the system is going to check, okay, how much this person has. So he's requesting, the manager is requesting in September. There's already some amount added for October. So his in December, his balance is 0. So if you disallow negative, he cannot add any negative hours. But if you just add a warning, say like -8, then sorry 8, then that person will be able to add it. That is your future. So past, generally we will not allow, because we'll be signing off the time cards every week or monthly, right? So you will not be able to make any changes to the past. But present is like, in this present week, based on your future, and suppose already you've added something for October, right? So if you disallow your present, what happens is, if your balance is 0, then you'll not be able to take any days today, because you already have something added in for October. But if you just want to send a warning, then you'll be able to add whatever amount you wanted, and you'll be displaying a warning. So that is your overdraft. Overdraft is nothing but like how much above your average you can just go. That's your overdraft. So this is accrual policies. So mm, 1 second, let me just see if there's anything that I missed. Okay, that's it with accrual policies. So upon review, you will be seeing how many policies you want to create a profile, and then the final step is to create an accrual profile. You'll just keep adding what all policies you want, and then you'll create an accrual profile. That is the final step. I think I have to speak about. Okay, I'll explain you what full-time equivalency is, and you have an exercise for this. Okay, so this full-time equivalent is a number defined to indicate what is expected from somebody who is working full-time, and then you use that number in the fields in the people records and the accrual configuration to prorate the accruals for your part-time employees. So there are some countries that say that there's only 40 hours of work week. So we all work 45 or 50 hours, right? So there are some countries that say that they only have to work for 40 hours. So when you set this full-time equivalency, you use this number to prorate that with your part-time employees. So that is the advantage, or that is the definition for your full-time. So you use this full-time setup in your date patterns, your grants, only in your fixed grants, and then there's a place in people record where you'll be adding this full-time. So when I go to people record, okay, I think I forgot to add full-time employees to this, so I will add that. So once you create an accrual profile, you'll be adding it here in person under accrual profile. You'll select whatever you want and you'll add it and apply it to an employee, and you will test it. So this is your accrual profile, but I'll finish full-time equivalent. So if you go to your date patterns, so there's an expected hours worked during this pattern option over here. So this is your first full time. So in this date pattern editor, we have to find one of the fields to help tie together the full time equivalent. So in the unexpected hours, sorry, in the expected hours work, the time entered is what the employee is expected to work within this pattern. So this pattern is really important. So it can either be 40 or 80 for a pay period definition date pattern, but your FTE has to be carefully added when you're working with monthly and even yearly date patterns. So for example, if you specify a date pattern of one pay period, the hours could be 40 or 80. But if you specify a monthly date pattern, the hours could be 240. To If you want to calculate part-time hours, the system is going to use the part-time employee ratio in the person record and the number of hours that a full-time employee is expected to work within that window to complete the calculation. So this FTE is used only with your fixed grants. So the next thing is in your grants. So in your fixed, you have full-time equivalents. So full-time equivalents cannot be used with your earned grants. So as we've already discussed, this FTE is the number of hours that are expected to work in the date pattern. So in this editor, we see the radio buttons to tell us how we want the FTE to be handled. So you can either choose do not adjust grant according to FTE. So this means that the system is not going to do anything for the part-time employees. you're just going to make your own calculations. You don't want to prorate it, you're going to make a calculation. If you select adjust grant according to FTE, in this case the system is going to prorate the grant amount based on the FTE of the expected hours worked in the date pattern and the ratio only that you find in the person record. So the last one is grant FT adjust grant according to FTE and the pay code. So in this case, you're going to adjust your grant according to FTE, and the pay code option will be used for those employees who work more than the FTE and the selected work pay code together. So this is useful if your part-time employees are going to work some extra hours and if they go into some overtime situation. So in these cases, your company may want to adjust the FTE according to the expected full-time hours in the date pattern and the ratio in your person record. But in addition to this, it is also going to consider the hours worked needed to be in a pay code entered, like your compensation hours or your regular, etc. So this is just to eliminate overtime hours as being counted as a part of the calculation for your part time. So if you, I think it's there in the, I think it's there in the people record. In, oh yeah, there's this is in accrual and leave. You have this full time equivalency option here, right? So there are two ways to define full time equivalency. The first is the percentage, and the second is a ratio type. So the, for example, in the date pattern, if the full time expected hours is 40, you'll be setting the FTE as 40 here. So and you'll be expressing a percentage of either 50 or 100 that would indicate that this employee works 20 hours or half of the full time defined. So if you say 100, then the rating is going to be done equal to your full time. Like instead of working half, they'll be working full time. Even part time is going to work 40 hours. So that is your FTE. Or you can also say that it's going to have a ratio. Okay, yeah, I think that's it with it. Okay, yeah, that's it with FTE. I'll add the document to your I'll add a document with your names on the remote that you do. So we'll see on Monday again. You'll get the information so you can work on it on Sunday for sure. So there's also one more thing. So with accruals, when you're dealing with accruals, you have some preset reports in the system. Not sure if you have run this. You must be knowing reports. So in the reports, there are some very nice reports. So there's a report called accrual summary. So if you run this report, it's going to show you how many hours this person has taken for a particular pay code. Like what are his debits or grants, what are his resets. So all those things you can see in this report. So when you're going to analyze a situation, you can use a report. This is also a part of your activity. So that's why I'm just referring to it. Yep. If you're okay, can we close the class? I have a meeting in 5 minutes. Or is there anything else that we should cover?
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. We'll see on
Thank you.
Monday, 8.
Tomorrow
Yeah,
is no class?
tomorrow we have a class, sir. What time? Do you get the information for tomorrow?
8:45.
8:45.
No,
Yeah, works
still
with me.
not.
Okay. So tomorrow can we do a little early also? 7:30 to, oh sorry, like yeah, 9 to 10 okay with you tomorrow?
Yes.
Or too late?
Yeah.
Okay, then I'll ask them to send it for 9 to 10 tomorrow. We'll start with scheduling tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay, so Sunday alone we'll take a break and we'll continue on Monday. So I think next 5 classes we should be able to finish it. We'll have
Okay.
last 2 or 3 classes to review and all. Do you want any help with your resume?
Mm,
Have you started working on your resume?
No, still not. We are not starting in
Oh, okay, fine. How much experience do you have, if you don't mind me asking?
our total years of experience is 8 years in production and quality.
Okay, okay. Okay, so you don't tell them that you have 8 years of Kronos experience. You just say that you have 4 years of Kronos experience. or they'll treat you as more what to say. Like they'll ask you more advanced questions. So say it as four. So you'll be able to. You should be able to make it. Yeah. Okay,
Okay.
then we'll see tomorrow. Thank you. Bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Good
Bye
night.
bye.
Bye.
Good
Bye.
night.
Bye.